Ndewo no Igbo. Welcome to Igbo Shrine. So guys, for today's topic, I'm going to be discussing Oriaku versus Odoziaku. I know if you're an Igbo person, you've already heard this term, you've already heard this term a lot of times. So guys, I want you to just relax and get my perspective on this particular topic. And if you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe, comment, and share so that people would basically tune in and learn as much as you're going to get, as much information as you're going to get from me. So guys, let's get into the video proper. Thank you. Oh, yeah. So my inspiration for this particular video is in one of my group chats. There is this guy sent an article, so I'm going to read a few part of it. So he said something that was quite interesting that I obviously he said the ancient fathers believe that a woman is just meant to sit at home, give birth to children, eat food, wear expensive beads and wrappers. They are not allowed to earn and work or earn money or anything related to it. So now most of these women got comfortable and spend more on their husband's income, hence the name Oriaku. Now this is it's very funny when you look at it, because similarly we have Oriaku and we have Odoziaku. And I'm going to start by first of all explaining these two names. Now, Oriaku basically means a woman that just eats or spends the husband's income or his vast wealth, while Odoziaku happens to be a woman that happens to manage the husband's wealth, and basically comes into the family and helps to move the family from point A to point B through her probably her managerial skills or her intellect, the skills that she brings into the table, and helping the husband to manage the business. Now, obviously, when we look at the situation, the modern day Igbo woman, and how would I put it now, how we've been structured or taught to be homemakers, caretakers, and not really much on the going out there to improve yourself, going out there to help or to basically have a job, but rather to be dependent solely on your husband or your brother's wealth. Nowadays women are much so they are just more on the side of trying to get to a certain age and get married, while we see the men try to hustle, trying to struggle, trying to make name for themselves before they think about getting married. Now, let's come from another perspective. Definitely, in ancient Igbo times, they believe that Ugunwanye Budia. Ugunwanye, the respect of a woman, is focused on her husband. She has to have a man in her life to be regarded as a complete human being. Now, I'm not here to dispute that, because if you look at their mindset and how things were structured versus how things are structured now, there's a gap and there's a difference. The only constant thing we have is change. So I'm not going to come and start saying that what our ancestors, their perception then, is either right or wrong. It was their time. Now, coming down to this modern generation, we have to understand that things have changed, things have evolved. Then the only thing they are more interested in is having obaji, yam bands, and trying to have wives to help in the wealth and how to help in the farm and the rest of it. But now the situation of life has changed. Things have moved from point A to point B now. Now, what are the basic necessities that we have? You have children, you have to send them to good schools, you have to have a good house, you have to have a good car, you have to be successful in the terms of materialism, which was something that we didn't have as at that time. Now, let's come down to the topic of today properly. Now, what people don't understand is that the term Oriaku is a colonial influence, What our ancestors had and practiced as at that time was Odoziaku. People would assume that Igbo women were only meant to enjoy the wealth of their husbands, forgetting that these women themselves were the people that managed the market. It's ironical now that we see men going to the market to, have shops and the rest of it. I'm not saying it's wrong, because things have actually evolved. But in those days, the market was managed solely by the women. The men were more interested in what they would produce with their hands. That's why we have Ozo, we have Digi, we have Dimba, we have a hunter. We have all this aspects of work that men are usually inclined with strength and hard work. Hence the reason why men have Ikenga. And when we refer to Ikenga, we refer to the strength of the right hand of a man. That doesn't mean that women on their own don't have the strength that they tune into when we talk about Omumo, the birthing process. But when we talk about strength, it's more on the part of the man. Now, in those days, what they normally do is the men are able to produce and the women have the market. Now, the head of the market is the person we refer to as an Omo. Currently in Anyoma, we have a similar version of it. Now, let's get back to Odoziaku. What we had then, our men in those days were more keen on polygamy. That doesn't mean polygamy was a law. It was a choice. Monogamy was not a law, unlike the Christian aspect of it. It was also a choice. Now, these men were always keen to polygamy because marriage at that time was as a result of function of procreation, having much hands to assist in the farm, in the household, and the rest of it. And then, the much bigger your family is, the more respect you would have as a man. That was their time and their rights. Now, when that thing happens now, what the man does is to set up the woman, in the sense that he doesn't come to give the woman money when it comes to, okay, this is what I'm going to cook today. Oh yeah, I'm going to give you money. Go to the market and do this. No. He set up each of his family, because each family would always have a hut. The man itself has his own house, his own hut, and also have his own obi. That's his own. It's not a permanent structure that we have now, where the man and the wife would share the same room. In those days, the man lives alone. Now, if there's a turn of the first wife or the second wife, to join him in his obi, then we would see the woman, if it's her turn to cook, she would also cook and bring to her husband in his obi. Now, that's one aspect of it. What the man does at this part is to farm, or okay, they tell the woman, this is going to be your own farmland. He's going to harvest it while the woman takes care of that farm, weeding it and harvesting. Now, when the harvest has been done, the woman takes this produce to the market and sells them. The man oversees these things. So now he doesn't have a situation where he would ask Kedifu Nusiri, and the woman will say, we don't have any food in the house. So when we look at instances like this, we know that the word Oriaku is a colonial influence. Now let's bring it down to the market and how the market is structured. I've said earlier before that the market is always controlled by one woman, who we refer to as the Omo, and her cabinet. Now the Omo now is a woman king in Anyoma. She's still existing now, and I think there is one in Onitsha, but I think Onitsha aspect of it has become kaput. It's no longer functioning because all the benefits attached to an Omo has been swindled by the local government. So those people are no longer keen to accept the responsibilities of being an Omo. Plus, the men have actually influenced the market. So it's that it has no longer been an open circle for women to freely come and, you know, gossip and discuss about themselves. Now, in his article that I mentioned earlier, he was trying to talk about how the word Oriaku, which was used in those days, is no longer performing its functions, and men are now more keen to women that work, women that are trying to, you know, that are independent, if I may use the word. But he actually misplaced it. Imagine a situation where the pre-colonial era, where women were known for their managerial skills, their hard work, and those kind of socialization was passed down from mother to daughter. Now, probably the situation of things that we have now, like having women just lazing around instead of trying to work hard, they are looking for easier ways out by being sugar babies and doing hookups and the rest of it. Now, this happens to be an aberration. We call it unto. Now, let's look at the colonial influence properly. When the Europeans came, okay, let's first of all look at the European society. These guys believe that a woman's place is in the house. That's why they have things like housewife. Housewife was nothing. It wasn't a terminology that we used as part of our culture. It was also this aberration that I'm talking about. We never had housewives. Chifototo, everybody will go into the farm, will go to work. Nobody stays at home except you're sick. We weren't known to be lazy. Hard work has always been something that has been a parallel institution between the men and the women in Igbo land. Now, when these people came, we shouldn't forget that these people had finishing schools for young women, where young girls go to school to learn one thing and one thing alone, to be seen and not to be heard, where they are taught how to serve their husbands and raise his kids. They are not taught how to function as a living human being. They are not taught how to do things, how to walk, how to go out there and, you know, fend for themselves. And in most situations where the husband dies, the women don't inherit this wealth. It is they look down to a man to take over the wealth. We all like this movie, Bridgerton. I might not really remember the name of the character, but we can remember the man that lost his wealth while gambling. And in this next season, they had to bring in another person to take over his family and not his wife or his children. Probably these women don't know, or probably they know, but these women are not given a chance to find out how to fend for themselves. Now, this was the European mindset before the invention of feminism and the rest of it. But at the end of the day, when these guys came down to Africa, came down to Igbo land, they saw a different system, which was an inclusive government. I wrote in one of my articles, I'm going to leave the link down below, fascinating truths about Igbo pre-colonial women. These people came down and they saw a functioning society where women also had the say in situations when we have Omuada, because we never had a communal king. Rather, we had people, communities by communities, clan by clan, and the eldest person in the community presiding over cases and the rest of it. In situations where it's going to be something that it's not something that they can handle, they could bring it down to the Ezemo, the chief priest, and the deity would preside over that case. This was our structure. So when these people came down to our land and we saw what we were doing, it's something that they have never encountered. And the white man, being sexist and misogynist, what he did was to appoint warrant chiefs, but excluded women in this function. Why would they do that? You cannot give what you don't have. In their own society, they never had a situation where women were bold enough to say things and the men would listen. So bringing it down here, they're now trying to replicate that same process. Now, the only historical record we have about the warrant chief that was appointed by these people was King Ahabi. I'm going to write down her name. You can research about her. In Odoziaku. A brief history about her. She was supposed to be married to a deity after the father committed an abomination. She ran out and went to a gala where she ventured into prostitution, tried to save her neck. Eventually, she learned so many languages, and from the prostitution, she got money, which helped her to basically establish herself. And now she went back home. When the white men came, she was able to understand her language and also so many other languages, becoming an advantage for her. Hence, the reason why they appointed her as a warrant chief before she later became a king. So, eventually, she took that power and tried to manipulate it by trying to institute a masquerade cult and the rest of the things that she did, which the men frowned on. When her excesses has reached to a certain extent, the people had to go back to the colonial government and report her excesses. Then, being a sexist society, they never appointed her as a warrant chief because they were happy about it, but because of her advantage, or because of what she brings into the table, because she helped them to conquer Odoziaku. But because she has lost her service to them, there wasn't anything that they need from her again. They had to side with the men, reducing her power and the rest of it. Now, this is one example which they benefited from. It wasn't done for the purpose of us, women or the Igbos, but for their own pockets and their own administration. So, when the colonial rule came, things like this started to evolve. Women were actually struck out from the things that they owned because they weren't counted, and when it came to taxation, their properties weren't also included. And at the end of the day, these women decided to give up. Now, that's when the name Oriaku started to come into play. Women sat down, they didn't socialize their daughters to be hardworking in terms of trying to earn money or trying to be hardworking outside the home. Instead, their daughters were socialized to be what word would I use? They were socialized to basically help or be housewives instead of the latter. Now, I hope I'll be able to give a distinction between these two things, between Odoziaku and Oriaku. But I want us to know one thing here. Igbo women were not just Oriaku, they were Odoziaku. Now, in situations, I went to Obioma on Sunday for a documentary that I was invited to come on, and I was talking to the man Agunechibe, and he made some things that were made some points that were very interesting. For instance, talking about Ichiozo, Nwanyi Ichiozo, or Nwanyi Bwinyenya. Now, these things are things that because of the woman's prowess, because how she has struggled or how she has developed herself financially, she can be able to buy an Enyinya, which is a horse, and kill it. Now, this cultural thing, it's very particular to diverse societies, and the cost of our lifespan and the lifespan of our channel will be researching on these adventures or achievements of these women. Now, before I end this video, I would look at the Omo or the Eba Odo Women's Society. It's still existing in Abagana region. That's an Abagana Nimo axis. Now, these women, if you look at Umwani Inyomudi, these were women that joined these societies because of their financial strength. Now, an elephant tusk, if you check the market price of an elephant tusk, now consider how rare it's going to be as at that time. Or women that wore ivory on their necks and legs. Now check out the financial strength of those women in those days and compare it to what we have now. So in our course as historians, in trying to talk about the obscure, I would also want us to understand that a lot of our Igbo culture and practices has been denied, making us look as barbarians and backward. But if we understand that our lives can improve based on knowing our history, our original history, then we can develop ourselves and we can teach our daughters right, and we can live a more balanced society, just as our ancestors did. Now, I won't come here to say that our ancestors got everything 100% correct. That's why we believe in evolution and change. So I'm here to advocate for change or progress based on cultural identity. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, don't forget to subscribe and wait for the next video. So guys, thank you very much. And if you want to reach out to me, don't forget to visit my website at www.igboshrine.com or visit my Instagram at ordinarymigbo. I'm going to leave the link at the description box.